Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for Fronteras. I'm Samantha Sonner. Today we are joined by New Mexico Attorney General Hector Balderas. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
And you've been down in Las Cruces in southern New Mexico a lot more recently.
I have. I'm out here doing a lot of outreach with the community, but also here to visit my son, who's a New Mexico State Aggie for the first time, and he's enjoying his freshman year.
Great, and I saw you were down here at one of our football games too recently.
Yes, I brought my family. My wife and daughters hadn't seen my son, so we wanted to get out and support the football team in this great community.
Okay, well, great. It's good to have you in Las Cruces more often. So to start with, I want to talk about something that's getting a lot of attention across the state, and those are the criminal charges that you have filed against Secretary of State Diana Duran. What should the public know about those charges that were filed?
Well, it's not appropriate for me to comment on the investigation or the prosecution, but what I can say to the citizens of New Mexico is that our office takes any allegations very seriously, and our top priority is to protect the citizens of New Mexico.
Now, I know you recently also said that you weren't going to be handling any cases that were coming out of your office, and those were going to be directed to the district attorneys. Is that similar because there is a creation of conflict of interest there, or?
Well, we don't comment on matters that we provide positions to the court first. It's important for us to make sure that we comply and that we protect the integrity of the entire process. But what I can say is that we do everything we can to make sure that the investigation and prosecution of any case is handled appropriately.
Right. Now, one of the things her office has said is that this is a political attack. I know you can't talk about the investigation, but I did want to give you a chance to respond to those claims.
Yeah, we're looking forward to bringing information forward, but it's not appropriate for me to comment on any of those type of issues at this time.
Okay, so now one of the other investigations that you're getting involved in is actually kind of a nationwide task force. I think 27 states are involved in this now, and that's with the Volkswagen vehicles and the faulty testing. So what can you tell me about that?
Well, our office created a strike force to protect taxpayers against any type of consumer fraud in New Mexico. Recently, we joined 27 other attorney generals at investigating Volkswagen for misrepresentation. And right now we're in the beginning stages, but that investigation will be an important step moving forward to improve consumer rights in New Mexico.
Right now, so is there anything that if a New Mexican is driving a Volkswagen car that they should know, and any steps that they should be taking at this point?
Well, they should call their dealer. They're also welcome to call our office as well to find out a status. And yes, we have consumer protection division that can better assist them if they have any questions.
Now, you had talked about creating that strike task force to really fight consumer fraud. What could you tell me more about that?
Well, the strike force is intended to work with whistleblowers and average citizens to make sure that if there are claims that we need to bring for unfair trade practices, that we have all the resources and the ability to recover taxpayer dollars. There's areas like Medicaid fraud, consumer protection, securities fraud that we want to make sure that we are aggressive in trying to recover funds for taxpayers.
Okay, great. So we are coming up kind of on the end of your first year in office here. What have you been most proud of that you've been able to accomplish?
Well, I'm the most excited about really focusing on protecting children and families. That's been a very big, important initiative for us. New Mexico is too dangerous of a place. New Mexico is too poor, that there are still too many children being victimized in our system, and it's real important that we have a strong Attorney General's office that can step in, investigate, and prosecute anyone who harms a child in New Mexico.
Right now, I know you have put together a bipartisan group of lawmakers to work on child pornography laws. Is that correct?
Right. There's too many loopholes right now in the law where we want to make sure that the punishment matches the crime. And right now, people who exploit children with child pornography, I believe, still get off far too easy. And so we're trying to change the laws to close those loopholes.
Right now, you also have created a multidisciplinary violent crime task force, and that's doing some things to protect children as well?
Yes, recently Officer Benner in Rio Rancho was gunned down by Andrew Romero, who was someone that didn't need to be out exposed to the public. And so I convened a task force where we're all going to come together as agencies and make sure that we focus on trying to improve community safety, improve law enforcement safety, and really look at the system to see where the system is failing. Why is it that there are too many young people not given enough opportunities? Why is it that the criminal justice system is right now being overrun and ultimately not protecting families? So that disciplinary task force is going to look at some of the violent crimes, study what went wrong, and try to bring out reforms.
Right now, I know there's about 25 different agencies that are part of that task force. Why is it so important to work with all of those different agencies and bring them all together for something like that?
Well, right now we have a justice system that when it fails, it seems to blame each other rather than come together around long-term systemic solutions. We think the justice system can get better and be more responsive to the real struggles that the families are really facing when it comes to dangerous situations. And so this disciplinary task force is bringing together social workers, educators, law enforcement, so that we really can see where it is that we are also contributing to some of the failure. We really think this is a game changer. Once these ideas come out, we're really hoping there's going to be a lot of community support. And finally, what's different is we are bringing people who've been victimized by the justice system, like the widow, Mrs. Benner, of that fallen officer, so that we can hold the system accountable and make sure that these community heroes get involved in trying to bring out long-term reform.
Right now, you're saying you're expecting those results to come out. When are the public going to be able to see those?
We've had various meetings right now with all these agencies. We're hoping to have a report for the legislature by January.
Okay, now I know one of the other things that you're really fighting for with children is increased funding for internet crimes against children. What is so dangerous about the internet crimes against children right now?
Well, internet crimes against children is one of my passions because right now the risks to children look very different than when I was a child. We no longer have the suspicious van at a park with a stranger. The internet now is the new playground for bad actors, and the internet is being used as a way to lure children and put children into very dangerous situations. And quite frankly, children are influenced way too much on the internet. And so what we're trying to do at the Internet Crimes Against Children is educate families and law enforcement partners at the real dangers that are exposed right now. We have over 8,000 tips at any given point in the year from predators trying to exploit children. So the Internet Crimes Against Children is trying to prevent those awful harms. We only get one chance at protecting a child. One of the things I'm most proud of is we have so much community support in every corner of the state. Families, law enforcement agencies are asking to be trained and become a partner in the Internet Crimes Against Children unit. So I'm very proud of that.
Right now, is that part of it, that training? Because a lot of the officers, this is a new form of crime that it's difficult to investigate. Is that part of it, that there needs to be a lot more training?
Absolutely. That's one of the real stories of success, is that when you take a small law enforcement agency in Deming or in Columbus or even Las Cruces for that matter, and they need specific training on how to investigate a crime dealing with digital evidence, we can lend a hand and provide that type of technical training. We're also trying to do front-end education where children and parents can better arm themselves with information and strategies on how not to be exploited on the internet.
Right, that was going to be my next question. What are some tips that you can give parents who, because children, there's really no way to avoid the computer. They need it for school projects, they need it for basic everyday things. So what can you tell parents who are allowing their children to now go online and do this research themselves?
Well, the first thing is to establish a good relationship with your children about the functions and the risks that are on the internet. A lot of times we as parents just haven't had the conversation to start up the proper dialogue and expose the child to what it could be a reasonable risk. Secondly, it's very important that parents understand, and children, that there are resources like our office that can come down for free and provide a training and really walk them through the risks that are exposed. It could be chat rooms, it could be misrepresentation of identity on the internet. There's a lot of information out there. It's just a matter of connecting the dots. And of course, finally, this is a real risk of criminal activity. This is no longer just the front window of a computer. There are some horrific acts that are occurring in New Mexico, and it's very important to have a very frank conversation with children about the horrific events that may potentially take place.
Right. Now, another important issue, especially for us down here on the border, is human trafficking. It's a large problem across the country. I understand you just got a grant from the DOJ to help create a human trafficking task force in the state?
That's correct. I mean, human trafficking is one of the darkest, most horrific crimes, but it's also growing economically. It is surpassing drugs and gun running as a global epidemic, and the human trafficking is here in our backyard. We just received a $1.5 million grant from the Department of Justice to better prosecute, better train, and better research the human trafficking epidemic here in New Mexico. We've also secured various prosecutions. It's important to be very, very firm and aggressive when prosecuting human trafficking. Human trafficking is like human slavery. It involves prostitution, rape, drug abuse, sex abuse. It is an ugly, ugly crime, and we are taking it very seriously. But we cannot fight this battle without community partners, community leaders, and educators. And so this grant is going to go to investing in each of the communities in New Mexico.
Right. Now, I know a lot of people probably don't understand the grasp of how large the human trafficking problem and human slavery problem still is in the United States. This is still a big issue.
It's a very big issue because a lot of times human trafficking will be masked by other conduct or activities. So some people might misjudge that there's human trafficking activity because they're just minimizing it to a domestic violence issue, or they might think that it's just a prostitution type of case, when in fact these individuals are the most vulnerable citizens or individuals in the community, and furthermore they're being exploited and transported as human slavery. And so it's a very multifaceted type of crime. It's hard to police, but we are getting better in New Mexico at investigating, tracking it, and also finding resources for victims who have been victimized as in the human trafficking area.
Right. Now, I know the last time I saw you were down here at New Mexico State, and you were awarding funding to the Water Resources Institute here. Could you tell me a little bit about why that funding was awarded and where that's going to go to? Sure.
I mean, we're very committed to protecting families in New Mexico, but one of the things that we've identified is that it's important to improve and increase the public safety for families in New Mexico, but it's also important to protect and fight for economic security for families so that they're able to raise their families in a healthy, safe environment. And water is a public safety issue because if we don't have enough of it in our economy, if families don't have access to clean water, we need to make sure that they have every opportunity to strengthen the economic security of that family. So investing in the Water Institute here is a very, very good investment because we need to find out what the community needs to have 10 years, 20 years from now to make sure that we have adequate water resources. We're also litigating against the state of Texas to make sure that this area in southern New Mexico has enough access to water to appropriately grow and be able to raise those families in a safe environment.
Right. Now, how dire do you see the water problem really being in southern New Mexico right now? I know there's a lot of talk about the drought out in California, but we are in the middle of a drought here, and it's been going on for a while now.
It is dire, but it's a situation that we can overcome together. But the two very big weaknesses that I see is the lack of planning. First and foremost, we need to better plan because water will always be scarce and valuable. And secondly, What I'm very worried about is communities being pitted against each other to fight for water resources, New Mexicans against New Mexicans. And I want to change our approach so that we're able to work around a collective plan and make sure that every New Mexican has the opportunity to have adequate and clean water in New Mexico.
Right. Now, you mentioned that litigation against Texas. That's kind of the pitting the two communities against each other. But what is that? Where is the water problem there that we're really fighting with Texas over right now?
Well, that initially is about how we provide enough water to Texas, but it's also a litigation about how we use water in New Mexico. And I need to make sure that we have a resolution and that we come out out of that litigation in a way that protects New Mexico water rights first. And so we're using that litigation right now as a tool to strengthen our position for the future related to water as a natural resource.
Right. Now, this is a little bit of a new thing, the Attorney General getting involved in trying to protect water. But you're saying this is an issue that the Attorney General's office should be handling.
Absolutely. I mean, our focus is about looking at the family as a whole unit and making sure that we mitigate or minimize any of the struggles that the average family in New Mexico is facing. And one of those issues, of course, is making sure that they have access to natural resources, a safe environment, and that we are utilizing our public resources like investments in schools and roads in a very accountable and efficient manner so that that family can prosper in the safe community.
Right, and along those same lines, you've also called New Mexico's energy system and New Mexico's energy plan dysfunctional, and that there really needs to be reforms in how we deal with our energy in the state. Could you tell me a little bit about what reforms you'd like to see in that area?
We are always fighting on the front line to improve safety in New Mexico, but in this fight for better economic security, I really believe that New Mexico needs to do a better job in how we develop and manage energy in New Mexico. It's one of the rare opportunities. New Mexico is energy wealthy, yet we live in one of the most poor states in the country. And so we need to do a better job in how we identify, manage, and distribute that energy so that all New Mexicans can have affordable, clean, adequate energy throughout New Mexico. So I see it as a big opportunity where we can improve. And the more we improve in our energy policy and our water policy, I believe that we will have a greater impact at creating prosperity for all New Mexicans.
Right. Now, I know you've also said that this is something where the PRC needs to take into account when energy companies are really looking to invest in solar energy and wind energy. Is that correct?
That is correct. I believe that we have an obligation to make sure that every New Mexican has access to clean and affordable energy. It's not good enough if certain populations in New Mexico have access to energy as a luxury good, but yet certain populations in New Mexico have no access to solar or clean energy options. So we have to do a better job in making sure that we provide energy to all New Mexicans.
Right now, we are getting into municipal election season here, and a lot of things that people are really concerned with are campaign finance, which I know this is something that your office has also spoken about. What reforms do you see really needing to be made in terms of campaign finance?
Well, I've always been critical that New Mexico can be a more accountable place for citizens, that New Mexico government agencies can do a better job at providing accountable, transparent government. And really strengthening campaign finance laws would be a wonderful improvement for New Mexico. Also strengthening Open Meetings Act compliance and public records management would also be a big win for New Mexico. I really believe ultimately we need to improve in these areas if we're ultimately going to truly strengthen the economy of New Mexico and the quality of life for New Mexicans.
Right. Now, do you think investing in some of those campaign finance reforms in New Mexico could help public trust in the politicians that are running the state?
I always believe that the more transparent and accountable a system is, the better it will be in delivering and earning trust of the general public. Clearly, there can be a lot of reforms. One of the reforms that I think that would be very helpful is just upgrading the way we distribute that information to citizens. Citizens should have access to that in real time. Secondly, there should be some type of penalties or incentives for elected officials to comply. We shouldn't just always just be put in a position of trust. There should be some type of accountability as well built into the system.
Okay, great. Now, I know one of the first things that you did when you got into office was you released the results of the behavioral health audit from 2013. And that was a big deal. A lot of people saw that as a way for the government was really being accountable. So could you tell me about that decision to kind of release that heavily?
We still have an ongoing investigation into many of the various health providers. We've also cleared a couple of them already. And we've also hired a national forensic audit firm to help us assist in completing those investigations. I did release that initial behavioral health audit because I thought it was important for management and citizens to see where it is that report concluded some of those controversial issues. So we released it because we also believe we could conduct our reasonable review and oversight without keeping that report no longer in a secret form.
Right now, and do you think that audit and that your continued investigation with that is something that does need to happen quickly because behavioral health services are so lacking here in the state?
I do believe that the whole entire process needed to be increased in terms of timeliness. We went to the legislature and asked for resources to speed that process up, and we're actually grateful that we are engaged in a more timely process right now. But we also need to find a better way to provide behavioral health services to the most vulnerable populations and still be able to investigate fraud, waste, and abuse. And so I'm hoping that from this very unfortunate situation, we'll come about with a stronger behavioral health system.
Right now, a lot of people know that the Attorney General is the head lawmaker for the state, but you also do a lot of outreach programs throughout the state in a bunch of different communities. Could you maybe tell me a little bit about what some of those outreach programs are and how people could interact with your office more?
Our office's philosophy is that we really need to run to the highest risks that families are facing in New Mexico. We need to get out in the community and fight these battles with our families in New Mexico. I'm very proud to offer a whole new line of trainings that is geared to trying to protect the family in New Mexico. We offer now financial literacy training. We are trying to increase our victim advocacy training in New Mexico. We are now trying to ask the legislature to invest in a forensic vehicle that can drive around the state of New Mexico to help assist with child abuse cases in the state of New Mexico. So we are really doing our best to walk the walk when it comes to uniting and partnering with families throughout New Mexico. But I do believe that it's not enough just to be the state's top legal officer, that to truly be a public safety official, we need to make sure that we are offering tools and strategies and really walking in step with the community. And that's what we're doing at the Attorney General's office with all of these trainings.
Right now we're coming up on the end here. Is there anything else that you've accomplished in your first 9 months here in office that you'd really like to discuss?
Well, we have opened our office up to the community. We're also very proud to have opened our office to veterans and people who have disabilities. We believe that our office has a mission to serve and to lead with a strong voice representing all New Mexicans. So I'm very proud that a young kid from Wagon Mountain, New Mexico could grow up to be Attorney General, but it's more important for us to share our power and authorities with the general public and continue to open our house in Santa Fe, Albuquerque, and in Las Cruces. So I look forward to coming down here more often, investing more resources in the Las Cruces area, and I'll be back, so I really appreciate it.
Okay, great, and you've got a couple more years, so what else would you really like to accomplish here in the state?
Well, I think after this first year, we're going to reassess, and we are going to serve in the way families want us to serve and protect New Mexico. And so I'm certain that we will be challenging on reforms. I'm sure that we will take on very important cases that New Mexico needs us to fight. But I don't think too far down. Right now, I want to make sure that we handle our cases, that we take care of our citizens today. But I am excited to serve.
Right now, you mentioned what the public really wants to see. So how can the public get in touch with you, and what issues should they be getting in touch with you about?
Well, we have a very user-friendly website. All you have to do is Google New Mexico Attorney General. You're also welcome to call our direct line in Santa Fe or Albuquerque. Please reach out to us. But we have a very interactive website right now, and we want to treat and make sure that we protect New Mexico in the best way we can.
Right, and what specific issues should people be contacting you about if they don't know what your office may do?
Well, any and all issues, anything to do with consumer protection, anything to do with any type of bad acts or anything that they want us to look into, we can partner with local law enforcement. And finally, they just need to reach out to us before something bad happens. Get involved. There's ways to partner with us and collaborate and offer trainings in their community. We will really build a certain type of program around community needs.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for joining us,
Thank you.
Attorney General, and thank you for joining us for Fronteras. We'll see you next time.